It's going to be in English. I hope it's not a problem. You have to excuse me because I'm replacing the speakers, so I didn't have time to prepare. And this is the talk which I gave in Minsk in Belarus about 4 months ago. So the first question is, who have seen it before? Nobody. That's great. Okay, so it's not about coding now. It's gonna be just kind of a conversation with you. I'll try to explain the problem I see, and I'll try to offer some solutions. So don't expect me to show you like Java code, but we will definitely talk about Java. So the story is that, like, I want to start with a small story about how it. So about a few weeks ago, we had a conversation. I have a chat, a Gitter chat, where we discuss object-oriented programming and the ideas from my book. Probably some of you know this. I wrote a book, Elegant Objects, about object-oriented programming and Java as well. And I was trying to convince somebody there, telling that we need to improve the way we write code, an object-oriented code. And because the way we write it now is not good, and then we have problems. And then that guy said, what problems? Like, what's wrong with the way we code now? Why do we need to change something? Like, what problems? That was the question. And then I spent like about a week researching the internet and trying to find what people are actually saying, trying to find an answer for that question. Like, what problems? And then I found a number of quotes from quite popular programmers and scientists about object-oriented programming, and I wrote like a blog article with all that quotes, about 15 of them, and this is one of the quotes I like. So people in general say, you know definitely who Paul Graham is, right? He's he's a founder of one of the founders of Y Combinator and quite famous functional programmer. So this is the quote from this guy, and there are many others. So people are saying in general that object-oriented programming is actually a problem. It's not a solution. It gives us more trouble than it's supposed to solve. And there are many, many people say that, and they all blame object-oriented programming as a concept. So, but for example, this guy, he's more like from a functional side, so he is trying to promote functional programming, and he's saying object-oriented programming is bad. But some people also are object-oriented programmers, and they are also saying, like, for example, Jeff Atwood, the co-founder of Stack Overflow, he said, I'm not showing it here, but he said that object-oriented programming introduces more problems than it solves. And many other people, so who are actually programmers in C#, in Java, and all that stuff, all that object-oriented languages, they also blame OOP concept for being not as good as they expect. And I want to show you now that the problem is not with the OOP, not with the object-oriented programming, but the problem is actually with us, how we use it. And not just us, but I see 4 enemies which are trying to attack object-oriented programming. So we have 4 sources of trouble. So these 4 guys, well, actually there's 1 guy and 3, things who are trying to attack, not trying, but they are attacking object-oriented programming, and that's why, OOP, I don't know, OOP or OOP, let's call it OOP. So the OOP actually suffers because of that, and that's why we all blame object-oriented programming, but we have to blame them. We have to blame them for ruining the concept, and them means us. So we are also on that side. So we are also authors of books. We are Java programmers, we are creators of frameworks, we are users of frameworks, and we actually work in some companies. Maybe not so many of you work in Google, but we work somewhere in companies which make these troubles. And now I'll show you, we'll discuss why I call them enemies and what is the problem. In general, I would say that the fight is not against, no, it's the other way around. Oh, okay. 1 second. It's okay? It films? Okay, sorry. So I think this the fight is not between somebody and object-oriented programming, but between a structure, a discipline, a clear idea, and the chaos, which actually makes money. So there are two concepts, two opposite ideas. The first one says, if it works, it's good. This is what we have everywhere. So if the software works, no matter what it is, object-oriented, functional, whatever, Java, not Java, no matter what you use, if the product works, it's great. So we don't care about the ideas, we don't care about how clear is the code, how properly designed it is, just make it work. This is the very typical and very popular concept on the market. So there are many, you've heard it a lot, I'm sure. And the other one, the opposite one, which I'm trying to say, which is good, is I would say if it's good, if it's good, it works. So first of all, we need to think about how to make it good, how to make the right design, how to make the right structure for the software, and then it will work eventually. Maybe it will not work immediately because there definitely will be some problems because the clear design doesn't mean the workable software. But the attitude on the right flag is better than the one on the left side. But it's a quote from a blog of mine. I'm in general against the idea of ORM. ORM is object relational mapping. So I have an article on the blog which says that ORM is in general a bad idea, and that Hibernate is a bad library. So we should not use it because this and that, and I explain why. And then one guy wrote a comment there, like he said what he said. So stop saying that it's a bad concept. Instead, just introduce something else, make $1 billion, and then everybody will just believe you that, yeah, this is a good concept. I don't have many things to say against it because I don't have a framework and I don't have a paradigm which actually made already $1 billion. But this makes sense, and this is what kills us. So this attitude, I think, in general, kills object-oriented programming and kills the good design. And now, step by step, enemy by enemy. The first one is books. So there are many books which are explaining object-oriented programmers to young programmers, to people who just joined the area, who just joined this industry domain. And all these books, most of them, 99% of them, explain what object-oriented programming in the wrong way. So they don't really say what they have to say. Object-oriented programming, when it showed up on the market, like 30 or maybe 40 years ago, it was a replacement or improvement, the next step, after procedural and imperative programming. Like languages like COBOL, Assembly, Pascal, C, all that languages, they were imperative, they were procedural, and they were difficult to maintain. So the software written in that languages were too complex to maintain because it was procedural. So objects were introduced in order to lower that complexity, in order to make code more maintainable, in order to isolate code in the objects, and then separate the objects by abstraction and let these objects communicate in the right way. So treating an object as an entity which is able to communicate with other entities is the right way to treat them. But many books which I've seen about, starting from Wikipedia, many books, and including Wikipedia, they say that an object is just a piece of data with a number of methods attached to this data. That's how they present that. For example, Wikipedia, it says that an object may contain data in form of fields called attributes and some code, procedures, often known as methods. So we can see that the definition by itself is procedural. So Wikipedia says that the object contains procedures. So the way it defines objects is wrong. This is the wrong definition. An object is something else. It's not the data plus procedures. It's something else, definitely. But Wikipedia is lying to us. So many books as well. Look at this one, quite popular. Each object looks quite a bit like a little computer. It has a state, it has operations that you can ask it to perform. So again, the computer, thinking that an object is a computer, is a procedural way of thinking, because the computer is something we can tell what to do and the computer returns the result to us. So it's not how we should treat an object, because this is the procedural definition. Another one, a class is a collection of data fields that hold values and methods and operate on those values. Again, data fields and operations. It's just a procedural definition of something, of a data structure, which contains some procedures on top of it. Another one, by quite popular inventor of C++. An object is some memory that holds a value of some time. It's even more wrong, because it's just a piece of memory that holds something for us. Technically, it's correct. In C++, it is a piece of memory with a number of methods or procedures attached to it. But if you think that way, you're not going to be writing object-oriented software. You'll be writing procedural code in Java syntax. And you know, I've heard many stories about Smalltalk. I'm not a Smalltalk programmer, I'm a Java programmer. But many people said that Smalltalk is actually an object-oriented language. That Smalltalk is the right language and all that. That you should look at Smalltalk. So I took that book and I tried to find the definition of an object in Smalltalk. And it's also wrong. This book also is, saying the wrong things about an object. It consists of some private memory and a set of operations. So it's a definition of an object as some data structure with attached functionality, which is not what an object is. The only book I know which actually says something right about object is this one. Probably you've heard about it. It's called Object Thinking. And the definition is quite interesting. It says an object is the equivalent of the quanta from the universe is constructed, from which the universe is constructed. It's quite funny, right? Because it doesn't really define what an object is for us programmers. But this is the right way to look at objects. This is the right way to understand object-oriented programming. So it's not just pieces of data staying around of us and some procedures there, and we should command and control them. So the paradigm of command and control is wrong. It's coming from procedural programming, and it's been implemented in Java as well. So we shouldn't blame object-oriented concept. We should blame these people who write about them in the wrong way. Not this guy, but all the guys I mentioned before. So this is the first enemy we have, the books. They give us wrong definition of object-oriented programming, and then we implement it the wrong way, and then we say, like Paul said, object-oriented programming is just a mess. But it's not because it was a mess as an idea, it's because these books understand it wrong, and all of us understand it wrong. That's the first problem, the first enemy. The enemy number two is languages. So we use languages, we have languages which tell us how to write code on an object way. And these languages are wrong. So I took Java, for example, and I found these keywords which I think actually are ruining object concept in Java. So Java, by using these keywords, by giving us these keywords, is ruining the idea of object thinking. For example, let's take one for example. Which one do you like? Which one do you like? Final. That's right, final. So it was predictable, huh? So the first one is final. So what's wrong with final? If we have final in Java, it means that we may have not final. So everything should be final by definition in object-oriented programming. So having something not final is actually turning our objects in mutable structures, in mutable data structures, which are open, which allow other structures to change their identity, to change their state inside. So the final keyword, without the final keyword, everything would be immutable. We would not have setters, which is a terrible idea in object-oriented programming in general. So setters is completely evil idea. We would not have anamic model. You know what anamic model is, right? It's like, data transfer objects here and there which don't contain any logic. They just transfer data from left and right. You just inject data over there and then you transfer them from one procedure to another. It's called anemic model. We would not have data structures if we would not have final. If everything would be final, we would not have data structures. Everything would be objects, like real objects. But now we have so many data structures everywhere. If you're using Spring or Hibernate, you know what I'm talking about. When the object is actually just a collection of setters and getters, and all you can do is just inject data there and then retrieve data from there. This is not object-oriented programming. And of course, procedural thinking. So by having these non-final things, we think procedurally. I'm not going to go into the details. You can read like my book or a blog, but I'm just overviewing the situation. The second problem is static. So we have static methods, or so-called class methods, which exist on classes, but they are not attached to any objects. So they are just pure procedures in Java domain. So they came to us from C, from, I don't know, from assembly, from that world many years ago. And Java just adopted them. When Java was created, they just took that stuff and put it into Java because there were so many programmers, procedural programmers in the world who didn't know how to design objects right. They just needed procedures here and there. They just needed pieces of code. They didn't understand object idea at all. They just said, you know, I need this code to run. Just give me some way to run my code. And they said, sure, have a static method. And then you have a class called utility class, and then 50 methods there, 50 procedures, and you say, hey, I'm writing object-oriented programming. And it's a mess. Of course it's a mess, because you're using static methods. But who gave me the static methods? Java. So who should we blame? We should blame Java, not object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming was not invented with the static methods. There were no idea like that in OOP originally. This idea was introduced by Java designers who either had no idea what object-oriented is, or they just made a compromise to make these C programmers happy. So without static methods, we would not have utility classes. We would not have singletons. It's another terrible idea. Another horrible idea in Java world, singletons. It's just a tragic to have singletons. We shouldn't have them, but we do have them because of static methods. And we think like now that my code is a mess because object-oriented programming is a bad idea. No, it's because you're using singletons. And of course, we would not have procedural thinking. We would think like objects, not like procedures. Problem number 3, another keyword which is called instance of or dot class, reflection API. There's no place in object-oriented thinking like reflection or getting access to the class. Even in general, the idea of a class is actually not object-oriented programming. I'm not saying it here, but it's another subject to discuss. So even the idea of a class is wrong. There should just be objects and types and subtyping. Objects and types, but no classes. But okay, if you have classes, but you shouldn't have reflection API. That's just nonsense. Like getting access to the class and being able to actually decompose what the class is and look inside. And sometimes even I'm not saying it here, but this bytecode manipulation. It's nonsense in general. So we should have it in normal programming, but we do have. And then we blame our code and object-oriented thinking for being a mess. The bytecode manipulations is a mess. Reflection API is a mess. So without that stuff, so it leads to procedural thinking. Because of that, we don't really have the real polymorphism and we don't have the real encapsulation. Because it's possible now, using reflection, it's possible to go directly to an object and make manipulations there directly. We can inject something there, we can get an attribute, we can set an attribute. So it's not anymore a black box like it was designed, like objects were designed. The original idea was to have black boxes being composed into black boxes, into bigger boxes. Now we have just pieces of data and procedures around us, which we can go anywhere and get anywhere from everywhere, and then do these data manipulations. It's not object-oriented programming. And the last thing is annotations. Annotations, another terrible idea in Java. We shouldn't have it. Because again, it has nothing to do with object-oriented programming. It's just the concept of attaching something to poor objects without even telling them what's going on. You have an object or you have a class, you put the annotation on top of it, but the object doesn't know what's going on. The object can't control it. The object can't even, it can get an access to this annotation through reflection API, but it cannot actually, the object, for example, cannot change the value of the annotation. Annotation is attached to the class, not to the object. So it's something really procedural. It's coming from a completely different mind, a completely different thinking, and it's very procedural. Again, it leads to an anemic model as well, because we don't let our object decide what's going on. Instead, we annotate their classes and then just take control out of their hands. So what I'm saying is Java, as well as many other object-oriented languages, are just a mess. And because of that, we have the messy code. But not because the object idea originally. Object idea was clear, was good, was great, was perfect, but what we turned it into, using Java and many other languages, is a mess. Enemy number 3, frameworks. So we have frameworks which are actually telling us, giving us the design and telling us how to use our code and how to write the code, but they are also messy. It's a list of frameworks which I think are like, they should not exist. This is just bad. All these frameworks. You know them, right? Even JDK is there. Say again? You're the designer one. No?
Hibernate is not there, so it is good.
No, Hibernate, oh yeah, the JPA is there. Yeah, Hibernate is not there, but JPA and all other Hibernate clones is just wrong. So all of these guys, including JDK, the design of JDK is wrong by itself in many, many, many places. For example, JAX-RS, probably you know what it is. It's for RESTful API, right? You know how it works. But look at this code. This is the simple JAX-RS class. Look at it. I'm using it like quite often, and I really hate it. So I don't even know where to start. Well, first of all, there's no constructor. So they all ask us to have the default constructor, and that everything which comes from the outside world is being injected through setters. So I cannot have a constructor in my class. So they tell me to make a class without a constructor. Then I don't know how the dispatching of the request, of the HTTP request is coming from. All I have is the annotations, but me as an object, if I make an instance of this class index, I cannot control the process of requests coming in and requests coming out. So I'm pretty dumb, piece of code, which only knows how to process some data and return some result. This is not what an object should be. This is not how objects should be designed. It's quite difficult to test this stuff. I mean, it's difficult to see how the context is injected. So we don't know what's going on around us. So everything is coming through these setters and the annotations. Annotations control the life cycle of this object. It's just wrong. Apache Commons. Apache Commons is just a huge collection of utility classes with a lot of hundreds or maybe thousands of static methods. And look at this code. File utils, first static method, another static method, another static method. So there are no objects at all. They throw away the idea of objects in general. They just give us a huge collection of procedures to read the file, to write the file, to decode, to encode, to parse the string, everything. But it's just a C library. It's just a library in C language. Well, there's Java syntax, of course, yeah. But there are no objects at all. Well, in some places they have a few objects here and there, but it's just, just an exception. Maybe some programmers were crazy enough to introduce objects there. But in general, the overall design is forget objects. It's not object-oriented programming anymore. It's just Java. Unfortunately. JPA. Well, don't get me started. But here we have we have something which looks like classes. They look like objects, but in general, but in reality, they're like data structures, DTO so-called, where somebody injects some data into and then takes some data out, and objects don't know anything about what's going on. So it's completely a mimic model, which is, there are a huge amount of articles about Hibernate and JPA in general, how bad it is. It's not just bad because it's a mess, it's bad because it's not object-oriented programming. It works. Like I said in this flag, it does work. Yes, it can work. There are so many projects, probably you have this as well. We all write code using this stuff, and it works. But it's not object-oriented programming, it's Hibernate or Java. Enemy number 4, it's Google. Well, Google and others, but Google is a big player in the Java world. They actually, I blame them first of all because of the Android. And they actually, I think they made a really bad thing for the Java world introducing Android, and the way Android SDK is designed is just a mistake. And there are many other companies which promote that kind of thing because they have money. They have money, they invest money in that big product, and then millions of programmers just have to use that product because there's huge promotion in there. There's huge investment into them. So Android SDK, for example, I'm not a big expert, but I tried. I created a number of mobile apps using Android SDK. There's one class called activity, and there's 200 methods in this class object, whatever. It's nonsense. It's not possible to have an object-oriented world, 200 methods in one class. It's not a class anymore. It's something else. It's a shame. It's a shame to them. Like I don't know what we can say about Google designers, but they had no idea what object-oriented programming is. They took Java. It's bad for us because they ruined everything. I mean, if you ask somebody who's an Android developer, you can't call this developer a Java developer. It's difficult to say that because this person is, in most cases, has no idea what object thinking is. It's just procedural programmers because 200 methods, it means that it's just a piece of code. It's not an object anymore. It's just a location of procedures. You just put them all there. Where do we put it? Here. Why not? We put it here. Why not? What else? That's how they made these decisions. And it's a shame. So what I'm saying is, I'm finishing. So time to change sides. So it's time to decide, are you on the left side with these 4 enemies attacking object-oriented programming? Or are you on the left side and you're trying to defend object-oriented programming? I'm trying to be on the left side. It's kind of difficult because, I mean, they're big enemies, right? They're huge. They know, I mean, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of popularity, all these frameworks. It's difficult. But I think it's time to change sides. If you are serious about development in the future, I think that the future is bright, actually. I think that slowly, step by step, we can actually fight back. But it's difficult. So that was my message. And I want to encourage you to think, are you actually an object-oriented programmer or you're just a Java programmer? It's different things. And I think that Java, and that's answering another question, I think that Java in general right now as a language is moving towards the wrong direction. So it's not becoming a better and clearer object-oriented language. It's becoming just like this Android SDK, just a place for as many techniques, as many tools as possible. You want this? No problem. You want to change your bytecode on fly? No problem. You want to, whatever, you want to use functional programming? Here you go. You need like lambdas? Here you go. So whatever you want from all the possible, paradigms and languages, just put it in Java instead of actually implementing what's needed, instead of removing what we don't need. So I think that we're going right now in the wrong direction, but maybe we can, change sides and go in the right direction. That's it. Do you have questions? Yeah. Do you have?
One, two. Thanks a lot for great speech. It's also more like a request to think about what we have. You ask questions and give answers. But I have 4 questions. First of all,
4?
4.
Okay.
First of all, about utility classes. I understand why you create utility classes by design, but what alternative you can propose? Like maybe I too used to programming, so I just can't find. We have some functionality that is already tested, well known, and reusable. So instead of inventing my own bicycle, I just use some code how to form it in the right way.
Yeah, good question. I can repeat it. So the question is, what is the alternative to utility classes of these static methods? The answer is objects. So if you want, for example, I'll give a simple example to provoke you to think, but let's say you have a method which calculates the maximum number of 2 numbers. So you have A, B, and you need a maximum. So what do you do now? What do you do now? You call the method which is called max, the static method, right? We all know this method from JDK. Instead, we shouldn't do that. We should create a new object which is called max. So you should say new max AB. So you encapsulate AB into max as an object, and max becomes a number. So max is a number which is a maximum between A and B. So the first approach is imperative. So we're telling the computer, calculate who is bigger, and then give it back to me. It's called command and control. So I give you the command and I control how you do it, and then you give me back the number. This is imperative. This is assembly language. This is C. And the object-oriented is that we create a new object, which is a maximum between A and B. We don't know who's going to calculate the difference. We don't know when it will happen. We just create an instance of an object and give it somebody else. And then maybe later, if somebody needs actual properties of this object, actual behavior, then the maximum will be calculated. This is called declarative approach. This is object-oriented.
Thank you. Second question is, definitely you think right things, but in practice, like well-known sentence that good but not working program is much better than great idea but which is not working. So in reality, I don't know. don't know about all programs, but a lot of programs are really crazy mess of spaghetti code, but it's working, it's making money, and good because of this. But
That's a good question. I'll repeat. So the point is that if the software works, actually, it's better than the software which is designed perfectly, but it doesn't work because nobody's going to pay for it. That's the attitude which actually kills us. So I think that design comes first and performance and money comes second. So if we design the software correctly and we do it right, then eventually, maybe not immediately, maybe some customers will not appreciate that. Maybe some customers will say, I don't care, just do it the way, I don't care how it's done, just do it. But in general, we shoot ourselves in the foot if we're doing like that, because maintainability of the code is way more important right now, is way more expensive right now than just creating the code. So writing the software is like 10% of time and money we spend on it. And maintaining the software, except some exceptional situations, like when sometimes you create a game, a mobile game, you put it on the market and throw it away in a few months. But in general, traditional development is 10% or maybe even less you actually write it. And then 90% of the time and money you spend on maintaining it, on maintainability, of making bug fixes, of introducing new features, of transferring it to another team of programmers. And this is what's important. But if the software is created just to make it work, then this 90% becomes 900%. We just spend way more money for that. So it's our job as designers to convince our customers that we need to design it right. And object-oriented programming is a concept which tells us how to design it right. Java is not a concept. Java is just a collection of tools and instruments. But these tools and instruments, they don't fit together. That's why this becomes so expensive, and this one is so cheap. So of course it's cheaper to put pieces together. Yeah, maybe. You have 4 more? Or?
Two more, just 2 more.
Okay, do we have time? Enough? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry?
Yeah, you say that software is working, but does it work actually? It does bring money. Okay.
Yeah, in most cases, that's a good point. In most cases, it just does burn money. It's just a software, and then it just doesn't work. We think it will work. We hope it will work. We just create what we can, but then it actually, before the software becomes actually the working software, we need to spend more on maintenance and putting it into the market. So just creating the software is not enough. Yeah,
Okay,
maybe the question there.
Question
Yeah,
number 3.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. You promised to give some solutions. Maybe you can give us some hints. You describe some really serious problems, but what are solutions to them? What answers?
Well, solutions are there are many solutions for step by step. I mentioned problems. So first of all, for example, the solution is just stop using static methods. There are many solutions, but I'm giving an example. Stop using static methods. Stop using annotations. Stop using getters and setters. Stop using hibernate. All that stuff. So there are many suggestions which I'm giving, and I have stop using everything. Yeah, but no, stay with Java. Of course, I love Java. I write in Java every day. But in Java, there are so many bad things which were introduced into Java, and they keep introducing it. They keep giving us more and more to make our life even more and more messy. So don't use all this stuff. The majority, 90% of features in Java, they shouldn't be used. That's my point. 10% of that will be enough to create your software, to create all of the softwares you create. So just don't do these bytecode manipulations. It's just wrong. Forget about them at all. Don't touch the reflection API. If you touch the reflection API, you're already doing something wrong. Just don't do it. If you need annotations, just think again. Are you doing it right? Are you if you're using static methods, just immediately a signal for you, you are doing something wrong. So there are many solutions. Yeah.
Thank you. And last question. Maybe you can propose some alternative to Java language that is better.
No, I don't see an alternative to Java right now. I love the language, I love the environment, there are so many tools for Java, so many utilities. It would be just wrong to get rid of Java and say, let's go somewhere else and invent new language. No, I'm not saying that. Java is perfect. And nothing will change if we just stop using Java and go create another language. We will be the same. It's all created by us. I'm not saying some people created Java for us. Some people created Hibernate. It's us. It's me. It's you. We build it because we are using it. We are submitting tickets for them. We are supporting them. It's all made by us. So if we just say, let's stop it and create a new language, this new language will be exactly the same. We will create exactly the same. So we need to change first, our mentality. When we change our mindset, we will start using Java in the right way. And then Java will start changing slowly and slowly. Java 10, Java 11, they will stop introducing this nonsense they keep giving us, and they will start thinking in the right direction. I had a talk 2 hours ago about aspect-oriented programming. AOP. Aspect-oriented programming is a great concept which was introduced into Java, not into Java, but as a library, 16 years ago. And since then, over 16 years, Java hasn't introduced that functionality into the language. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to have in the language, but we don't have it. Instead, we have something else, which actually, makes the code worse and worse. So we need to change it. We need to change first us. Yeah, that's a question.
1, 2.
Yeah.
Igor, I like what you say, you're telling the right thing, but you are not the first one who tell it. In previous ages, when Dijkstra said, he said the same about procedural programming. He wrote several books about it, he spoke on all conferences about it, there are a lot of interviews with him. He told the same about procedural programming. He spoke to NASA software developers and all that stuff, and he was scared how...
Who again?
Dijkstra.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes. So you can see his interviews. He told exactly the same what you tell now about object-oriented programming, the same about procedural about, I don't know, 20 years ago. And it was the same. The code is awful. The procedural programming is used in the wrong way. You cannot test it. You don't know what it does. It works only by accident. It's the same you have now with object-oriented programming. And but he told that market usually rules. This is what you tell us now. That market rules. That there is always a time pressure, deadlines, and all that stuff. You have to release after release, and all that stuff. You have always deadlines, and these deadlines they really makes us do shit code, and they don't have us enough time to have a good design. Maybe we don't know how to design it right. Really, you're right, but there is always time pressure as well. There are not so many smart people who can do really object-oriented thinking and who can really design the programming this way. So I really like what you say, I completely agree with you, but you're not the first, every age has the same. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. What can I say? Well, he's dead, first of all, so... Yeah, I get it, yeah. I mean, you're right that the majority of us, actually, of programmers, they're not, maybe they still want just to make money and just to write code which just works, of course. Yeah, that's so sad. Well, it's not sad, it's reality, but people... I agree, but look at these guys. So they're the book writers. They don't have any time pressure. They just need to write the good book. They just need to think and write the book which will actually tell people, like, look, this is the right way. Of course, we will definitely make compromises. I do make compromises. I use static methods sometimes when I need to, when it's something, when something is really needed and the money is at the table, of course I'll do it. But I want to buy the book which will tell me this is the right way. Of course, make compromises. So first, I blame these book writers. I blame them for not thinking properly. They are making it for money. They are writing books for money. They want to sell that book. And they are making compromises which they shouldn't make. They should tell us the right way. They should explain us the clear picture, the right picture. And then it's our job to make compromises and say, you know what, I agree with the book, but now I'm going to use the static method. The second one, the Java designers, they have to be smart people. They have to be people who think. They are not on time pressure. They have a lot of money. They have good salaries. They have nothing to do. They're just sitting and inventing Java. So they should be quite, they're not like us. They're not in the trenches. They're not writing code every day. They're thinkers. They're getting they're writing probably, I don't know, a few hundred lines of code a year. That's all they do. But they need to write the lines correctly. But they don't. They don't think. I blame them. The frameworks, again, these guys are not in trenches, right? These guys have time. They have to do it right. And, I'm not gonna even say what I think about this. So these guys, they have like, huge amount of money, but not enough brains. So, and that's why this combination of these problems, we have what we have, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just want to say you shouldn't blame the designers of Java, because in Java you have something called garbage collector. So when you create an object, every time you want to sum two objects, then you end up with gazillion objects that someone has to collect, right? So it's made on purpose. That's what I'm trying to say. They tried to make Java like the best platform that has like best of all the worlds, like from functional programming, from object-oriented programming, like some spices from every little bit. And I think that's the beauty of Java. If you want to go object-oriented, you can go. But if you want to go like functional, nowadays with the lambdas, you can also go. And you also have like reflections and all those kind of tools. Like, I think that's really the beauty of the language.
Well, about the garbage collection, if you look at the Android, another example, which is the same, which is, to explain my point. If you look at the Android documentation, they say there clearly, I'm not sure about right now, but half a year ago, they said, we recommend you to use static methods instead of objects. So don't create objects. Use as many as possible static methods and don't recreate objects, because the Android platform is slow by definition. It's a mobile phone, and the solution is forget the object-oriented programming. Just do procedural. Use static methods. That's what Google recommends. So Google, instead of solving the problem of this multiple, many objects and garbage collection, and definitely garbage collection slows everything down if you have multiple, like millions of objects. Of course it's going to be a problem. But Google is supposed to solve that problem not by telling us that objects in general are wrong. Because this actually turns the whole idea, the entire Java, into a completely different language. Or pick another language. Pick another language, call it procedural language, and say there are no objects in here, there are only static methods, but it's going to be C. They don't want that. They want to use Java because they know there are a huge amount of Java programmers, so they just want to make money. This is the best way to make money. Let's use the territory. The territory is, full of Java developers. Let's just tell them, guys, Java, not Java, object-oriented, not object-oriented. Who cares? Static methods, let's go. That's what they did. So they have to solve it somehow. They have to introduce some mechanism which actually will allow us having objects and maybe garbage collection, maybe something else, I don't know. But objects and OOP and the right design and speed and performance. That's what we're paying them for. But they didn't do that. So that's wrong. So I'm saying that yes, I definitely know about the problem with garbage collection. Of course, you cannot use millions of objects if you want your software to be fast. Yes. But Java is on the market for like how many? 20 years? That problem had to be solved. We need to introduce something. I don't know, maybe the Java compiler has to turn my objects into static methods, but internally. When you compile stuff, like turn it into procedural programming on the lower level. Look at my brilliant design, all the objects everywhere, small objects everywhere, and then compile it down into like, some procedural operations without objects. Maybe, I don't know. But introduce something, give me something, but not ruin the idea and then blame object-oriented programming. And then say, you know what, guys? Your entire OOP is wrong. Don't say that. Any more? Yeah, there's a question. We have 5 more minutes.
You criticized a lot of programs and libraries, but can you name something that was designed good, some example of good software?
Yeah, sure, I have a framework. Well, I wrote a book. Maybe somebody of you heard of it. I wrote a book, and I have a few copies with me. So I wrote a book which summarizes all my ideas, which gives actually practical examples of how to write code in Java without changing the language, how to write code in a better way, so that your code actually will look way better, it work better, and all that stuff. So that's one thing. That's one step which I make in order to improve the world. The second one, I created a number of frameworks. Actually, I have one big framework, which is a web framework for websites, which is designed with all these ideas in mind. No static methods, no annotations, only objects, only small objects, no implementation inheritance, no static methods. Everything I'm saying here is implemented in the framework, and it's quite popular on GitHub. It's a few hundred stars there, and people are using it. It's called Takes framework. Take a look, TAKES. So this is the full framework, which is the HTTP server, which actually works, and we have a number of projects which are actually using it. So I made it. And I also made an award, annual competition for open source projects who can object-oriented. Like if you develop something in object-oriented way and you think that you're doing it right, you can submit your your project to me. And once a year in October, I give $4,000 to the best project. Just my personal money. So it's a competition, every year competition. I select the best project. It's a second competition this year, actually. The first year it was 150 projects. Now it's about 70 projects submitted. So it's a competition, and this way I actually like encourage people not just to work, encourage people to write the code better than they write in their day jobs. So you do you use Hibernate in your office, but you can do it better, like something, in open source way, and then submit it to me. I don't care about the popularity, I don't care how popular your project is, I don't care how many users, all I care is about how it's designed. So if it's designed right, if it's designed properly, then you will get the money, you will get the prize. And this year actually GitHub is also supporting that initiative. So I'm doing that. I'm trying to promote, to provoke, to encourage you programmers to write code in a better way. So that's 3 things I'm doing. I'm not just saying, I'm actually, yeah.
Hello? Okay. So you said you have to write new max object, yes?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, maybe it's, okay, in Java you can do static method import, so it's actually shorter code. But if you write new all the time in Java, maybe, well, it's longer than it could be, and I like terse code. Minimum amount of lines to express what I want to do, or sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely, absolutely. Right now in Java, if you write the code in the right way, the code will be longer. That's true, I admit that. So you will have more lines of code, maybe more files, you will have interfaces, you will have more actually files. That's true. But this is what Java has to work on. Of course, yeah, but now this is the reality. If you want to create the clean object-oriented code in Java, it will be longer, definitely longer than the code which is procedural. So that's true. But that's, again, I blame Java for that. So what can we do? Of course, there's new everywhere. It's kind of noise, right? So it would be better to somehow get rid of that. But for 20 years, Java is not thinking that direction. We're thinking about that, yeah. We're thinking right now about thinking about the language which will be based on Java, like JVM language, like there's so many of them, but with the proper syntax and with the proper attitude, without all this. Actually, it's not so difficult. We will just need to remove 90% of Java and just, and just stay with 10%, and maybe improve the syntax here and there. It's not so difficult. So we're thinking right now about that. Maybe next year we'll start that. Yeah, just one last question, I guess. Yeah.
I'm interested, do you have a real project with poor realization in the style? It would be interesting to have a maybe middle project like re-implement the JAX-RS or some, Spring it maybe will be too hard, but do you have a real project which is really poor object-oriented?
Yeah, like I said, this takes framework. It completely, it's not re-implements Spring, but it re-implements JAX-RS for sure. So it's a library, it's an open source library, which is a complete HTTP server plus, it's a replacement of servlets, JSP, all that stuff. So it gives you the framework to create a web system. And we have production web systems which actually use this framework. So we did it. And like I'm saying, there are no static methods, and there are about 300 classes in the framework. No static methods, and not a single class with more than 3 methods. Not a single class with more than 3 methods. No null references, no static methods, no annotations. So it's possible. That's my point. It's possible. Of course, it's not possible if you already if you already have the Hibernate in your, you have to use Hibernate and you have to use Spring. Of course, in that case, you're in trouble. You will have to, make some compromises. But if you're starting from scratch, it's not so difficult. It's possible. One last and that's it.
Yeah, but can you show the link to this library on the screen or something?
Yeah, but you can check my YouTube channel. I have a few presentations about this library,
okay.
And then you will find it there. Well, one last question. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your speech. It was great, and I have a small question regarding your opinion. You see that Java is over 20 years, and it's really hard to drive such a big community and language. And don't you think that people will get boring with just pure object-oriented approach? What do you think about it?
What do you think? I missed the last part. What do you think about?
What do you think about new features? They introduce every single release with new feature set, and you mentioned that it's really bad. That it is better to use just a pure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think that community will still be such a big community like Java has nowadays? Will it still be big like? For example, in 10 years, if there will be only pure OOP without any new features?
Yeah, I think so. I think that now Java is like way more complex, way too complex. It shouldn't be that complex. You need to, like, if you want to know Java like from A to Z, it's so much information. I know probably like, I don't know, 15% maybe. So there's so many features in there. Like I'm talking about features in the Java, in the JVM, in Java language. Well, probably I know the language like 90%, but the JVM and all these techniques of memory management, all that stuff, it's too complex, I think. And this complexity is, I think, unnecessary. So it's better to remove complexity instead of introduce complexity. And Java, with the every second next release, they just introduce more and more. They make it more and more complex. We can discuss, like we had a discussion on Razbor Polyotov about the Lambda and the functional programming in Java. And some people say it's not functional programming, but some people say it is, including Oracle. So it is something which they introduce, it's something new into Java. Instead of fix the way Java manages objects, they introduce more and more features which don't really fit together. It's becoming a mess, I think so. It's becoming too complex. So we need to try to remove complexity instead of make it more powerful. That's it, we're running out of time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's very impressive and passionate, and your contribution and involvement